My entire family forgot my birthday. We were busy with your brother's promotion, they said. I just laughed and flew to Paris alone. The next day my inbox was full of apologies. I didn't expect a parade. Not even a cake, really. A text would have been nice, just one of those lazy, automated "Happy birthday" messages with a balloon emoji and maybe a half-hearted "We should catch up soon" at the end. That would have been enough. But I got nothing. No texts. No calls. No posts. Not even from my mom. At first, I thought maybe they were planning something. A surprise, maybe? I told myself to be patient, that I was just being sensitive. I even cooked dinner for myself and left the phone on loud, just in case someone called and said, "Hey, come over, we've got something for you." But as the clock crept past 10 p.m., the only thing I heard was the dull hum of my refrigerator and the occasional ding from an app reminding me to drink water. The worst part? I had actually reminded them. I'd mentioned it in the group chat earlier in the week. "Hey, looking forward to seeing everyone this weekend. Don't forget Friday's my birthday." Not a hint of subtlety. I even added a dumb little smiley face. It was my 30th. Not just another year, this one mattered to me. I wasn't where I thought I'd be by now, but I'd made progress. Quiet progress. The kind that doesn't come with trophies or applause. But it was still mine. So when I woke up on my birthday to absolute silence, I didn't even get mad. I got quiet. That kind of quiet that seeps into your chest and makes your coffee taste like regret. But the real kicker came the next day. I finally cracked and called my mom. Straightforward, not angry. I asked if everything was okay. She sounded distracted. "Oh, sorry, honey. We were just so busy with your brother's promotion dinner last night. It completely slipped our minds." She laughed. Laughed. Like that was some tiny detail I should have brushed off. "You understand, right? This was a big moment for Jason." Jason. Of course. Golden Boy Jason. Mr. Financial Advisor of the Year. Newly promoted. He could probably host a dinner for himself on the moon and my parents would find a way to attend. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice or guilt-trip them. I just laughed too. A short, dry chuckle. "Okay," I said. "Got it." And then I hung up. What came next wasn't revenge. Not exactly. But I was done pretending. Done playing the role of the quiet son, the dependable one, the backup plan. So I opened my laptop. Typed in "flights to Paris." And 12 hours later, I was watching the Eiffel Tower sparkle from a hotel suite that cost more than my rent. Not because I was rich, but because I was worth remembering. The flight was overnight, which worked out perfectly. I didn't want to be awake for any of it. I didn't want to check messages. I didn't want to sit there thinking about all the birthdays I'd spent with my family, all the times I showed up for them. I just wanted to wake up in another country where nobody knew my name. And that's exactly what I did. When the plane touched down in Paris, the first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not silence, but a kind of soft stillness that felt kind. Like the city itself was giving me room to breathe. The hotel I booked? A 5-star boutique place in the 7th arrondissement, with a private terrace that overlooked the Seine. It had one of those rain showers with water pressure that made you question every decision you'd ever made about your bathroom back home. I dropped my bag on the velvet bench at the foot of the bed, stepped out onto the terrace, and stood there in the crisp morning air watching the rooftops glisten under a pale gold sunrise. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Then I took out my phone. First post, a photo of the view, caption: "Alone in Paris. Just how I like it. #underrated. No context. No explanation. Just that. I knew they'd see it. They always watched, even if they never said anything. By noon, I was seated at Le Muris, eating duck confit that melted like poetry and sipping wine I couldn't pronounce. The waiter asked if I was celebrating anything. I smiled and said, "Yeah. Me." I posted a picture of the wine glass raised toward the chandelier. Turns out solitude pairs perfectly with Pinot Noir. Who knew? Again, no one tagged. No mentions. But the message was crystal clear. By the end of the day, I'd walked through the Tuileries, stood quietly in front of Monet's water lilies, and treated myself to a custom leather wallet from a tiny atelier I found in an alleyway near Saint Germain. Every moment was deliberate. Every moment mine. That night I checked my phone. 34 notifications. Texts from my mom. Honey, are you in Paris? Why didn't you tell us? We didn't mean to forget your birthday. A missed call from my dad. A few one-word texts from Jason. Just, dude, come on. Call Mom. I didn't answer. Instead, I lit a candle, ran a hot bath, dropped my phone on silent, and slipped into water that smelled like citrus and lavender. I had no plan. But it was working. For the first time in years, they were wondering what I was thinking. And that alone was worth the ticket. By the third day in Paris, the city didn't feel foreign anymore. It felt like a well-timed escape hatch. A place where I could finally hear myself think without the low hum of guilt or the constant, background pressure to be grateful for scraps of affection. My inbox, though? That was starting to feel crowded. My sister, Rebecca, messaged me too, even she had forgotten my birthday, apparently. Hey! Just saw your pics. I didn't realize you were out of town. Looks amazing. Happy late birthday. Wish I'd known. Wish you'd known? I told you. I literally said it in the group chat. But I didn't reply. I didn't even open the message. I let it sit there, marked unread, like a digital version of how they'd made me feel. I posted again. This time it was a short video of the Eiffel Tower at night, sparkling like it does every hour, with the sound of street musicians playing something melancholy on a cello. My caption? They say Paris is for lovers. But honestly, it's a pretty great place to fall back in love with yourself. My DMs lit up again. Friends from college, coworkers I barely spoke to, even my cousin Josh, people who never reached out suddenly wanted to know what brought me to France. And beneath all of it, buried in between the compliments and the "so jealous" comments, were the ones that actually mattered. Messages from my family. More apologies. More explanations. My dad sent a message that was painfully short. I know we messed up. Jason's promotion wasn't an excuse. We should have remembered. He never used to admit things like that. But I still didn't reply. Because the truth is, it wasn't just the birthday. That was just the final straw. It was every time I was told to understand, when they forgot something important to me. Every time I sat in the shadows clapping for Jason, or listening to Rebecca's endless stories while no one ever asked how I was doing. It was being the reliable one. The afterthought? So no, I wasn't about to send a forgiving thumbs up and call it even. Instead, I started planning something bigger. The next phase. Something they couldn't ignore. And this time, I wouldn't be alone. 2 days later, I was sitting at a rooftop bar in Montmartre with a Negroni in hand, watching the sun drip gold over the city, when I made a call to Caleb. Caleb's one of those rare friends who never asks for anything but always shows up. We met during our first year at work, bonded over bad coffee and worse bosses. He picked up on the first ring. Hey man. You good? Yeah, I said, smiling. But I've got a crazy idea. He didn't even hesitate. I'm in. That's Caleb for you. The idea was simple, a second celebration. This time, with people who actually remembered me, who made space for me, who didn't need guilt to be reminded that I mattered. I told Caleb to gather the crew, Jasmine, Alex, Tori, Miles, our little ragtag group of the emotionally displaced but loyally connected. The plan was to meet me in Paris for a long weekend. I'd pay for the Airbnb. They just had to show up. And they did. 4 days later, we were clinking glasses in a private loft in Le Marais. They brought cake, candles, even handmade decorations that said, 30 and thriving, without you know who. We danced. We drank. We laughed until it hurt. And the best part? We posted everything. One group shot, in particular, blew up, me in the center of the frame, arms stretched wide, laughing so hard my eyes were closed, surrounded by the people who showed up without being begged. The caption? Turns out, when you celebrate with the right people, you don't need an apology. You need a plane ticket. By the time we left that loft and headed for the Seine to watch the midnight river cruises drift by, my phone was blowing up again. This time? My brother Jason. So, this is because of the birthday thing? I didn't mean for it to go that way. You could have said something. Are we really doing this? You're making it public? I didn't respond. Because here's the thing no one tells you, silence is an answer. And sometimes it's the loudest one in the room. By the time we landed back in the States, my phone looked like a confession booth. Voicemails, texts, even emails from my mom. She hadn't emailed me since I applied to college. We didn't mean to make you feel forgotten. Your brother's promotion it took over everything. But that doesn't mean you're not important. Can we do something when you get back? A belated celebration? She even tried to rope in my aunt, who sent me a carefully worded, "Just checking in, sweetie. Your mom's been worried sick." But it was Jason's last message that sealed it. I didn't tell them to skip your birthday, man. I didn't know they forgot. But you posting all that like a revenge tour? Come on. A revenge tour. He said it like I was setting fire to the family tree just for fun. Like I hadn't quietly endured every year where I was the one lighting the candles for someone else, showing up with a gift, cheering from the sidelines. I didn't reply. Instead, I posted one last photo. It was from the second trip, a panoramic shot from the cliffs above Nice, our group standing at the edge, the sea stretching wide and endless behind us. We looked small. Free. The caption? Celebrated with people who didn't need a reminder. No makeups. No do-overs. Just real ones. No one was tagged. But they knew. The text slowed down after that. Not because they gave up, but because there's only so much you can say when someone holds a mirror to your neglect and walks away without saying a word. But they weren't done. A week after I got back, my mom invited me to a belated birthday dinner. Said she was making all my favorites. Said Jason and Rebecca would be there. Said they'd even ordered a custom cake. I stared at the message for a long time. Then typed, "Thanks, but I already celebrated, with people who remembered the first time." And I hit send. You'd think that would be the end of it. But no. That message lit the fuse. My phone rang not 10 minutes later. It was my dad, which was rare. He usually avoided anything emotional by burying himself in the newspaper or retreating behind a grunt and a shrug. But this time, he sounded tight. "Your mother's upset," he said. No greeting, no "how are you?" Just that. I let the silence stretch. "She spent all afternoon cooking for you," he added. "She's trying to make things right." I stayed quiet. "She made that lemon cake you like?" I sighed, not out of guilt, but exhaustion. The kind that builds up when you've been the afterthought for 30 years and suddenly the people who always put you last expect gratitude because they finally remembered your name. "You want me to say thank you?" I asked. "For remembering I exist a week late?" My dad hesitated. "It was a mistake, that's all. Everyone's busy." "No," I said. "Everyone's not busy. Just busy with things they care about." Another pause. I could hear the TV in the background, probably the evening news. Then he spoke, quieter now. "You've made your point." I almost laughed. "I didn't make a point. I lived a truth. There's a difference." I could feel him wanting to argue, wanting to claw back some control. But the line stayed quiet. And that's when I realized I'd shifted something. Not just in how they saw me, but in how I saw myself. "I'm not coming," I said. "I've already moved on. Maybe you should too." And I hung up. No shouting. No grand finale. Just the dull thud of a door closing, one that had stayed cracked open far too long. The following weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I threw a party. Not a birthday party. Just a simple get-together at my apartment. Good food, a few bottles of red, music humming low through the speakers. Caleb came, of course. So did Jasmine, Alex, and a couple of friends from work who had noticed the photos from Paris and said, "You looked happy. Like really happy." I was. And for once, it wasn't a performance. It wasn't forced joy or practiced laughter. It was real. Somewhere between the second bottle of wine and a late-night game of cards on the floor, I realized something quietly monumental. I hadn't thought about my family all night. Not once. There was no sense of obligation lurking under my skin. No imaginary checklist of things I owed people who couldn't even remember the day I was born. Just the warmth of conversation, the comfort of being seen without having to audition for it. At one point, someone asked, "So what really happened in Paris? Was it a birthday trip?" I paused, smiling at the flicker of curiosity in the question. "Sort of," I said. "It was more like a wake-up call with room service." They laughed. I did too. But that was the truth. Paris wasn't just an escape. It was a line in the sand. A moment where I said no more. No more waiting for people to notice. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. No more performing gratitude for scraps. And when the party wound down and everyone hugged goodbye, I stood at my door for a long while, looking at the empty living room. The crumpled napkins, the half-empty wine glasses, the warmth still hanging in the air. It felt like mine. A life that fit. Not perfectly, but honestly. A week passed. Then two. No new messages from Jason. No apology from Rebecca. No last-minute olive branch from my mother. But I knew what they were doing. They were waiting me out. My family had this pattern, one they probably didn't even recognize. They would forget, offend, overlook, and then pretend it never happened. As if silence could sweep things back under the rug. As if time erased responsibility. But this time, I wasn't playing along. They had crossed a line, not just by forgetting my birthday, but by making it clear that even if they remembered, it still wouldn't have mattered. Because Jason was the priority. Because they were too busy. Because I was always the okay one. The one they didn't need to worry about. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger implies you're waiting for someone to change. I wasn't. Instead, I started changing the story. Not their story. Mine. I began to share more of my life, not with them, but with the people who saw me. I posted photos from that second Paris trip, the late-night espresso runs with Caleb, the wine tasting with Jasmine where she laughed so hard she dropped her glass, the dinner where everyone toasted me, unprompted, just because they wanted to. The captions didn't hide my message anymore. Turns out, you don't need a big family when you've got the right few. To the ones who showed up with no reminders, no guilt, no conditions, you're my people. I didn't tag anyone. But still, they watched. Instagram story views confirmed it. My mom. Jason. Even Rebecca. Watching. Silent. One evening, I got a call from my aunt, the only relative who ever truly treated me with a consistent kindness. We talked for half an hour, nothing heavy. But just as we were about to hang up, she said, "I saw the photos. Looked like a beautiful celebration. You look different. Lighter." And she paused. Then she added gently, "Your mom's not taking it well." I didn't respond at first. "She expected you to come around like you always do," she said. "She's realizing you won't." There it was. The unspoken shift. My silence wasn't just a punishment anymore, it was a declaration. That I was no longer available for the role they wrote for me. The reliable one. The invisible one. I had rewritten myself into someone who didn't beg to be remembered. The next morning, I found a box on my doorstep. No return address, but the handwriting on the label was unmistakable, my mother's. Inside, a store-bought birthday card. Blank inside. Not even signed. Just taped to the box was a note that read, "I don't know what to say anymore. But I hope you'll come home soon." I stared at it for a long time. Not because it moved me, but because it felt like a metaphor. A gift with no content. A message with no real words. An apology wrapped in the hope that I'd be the one to fix things. I resealed the box. and dropped it off at the nearest donation center. Because I didn't need to come home. I'd already found it. And it was quiet, peaceful, and full of people who didn't need reminding that I was worth showing up for. It came 2 weeks after the box. A text from my mother that sounded like it had been drafted and revised at least 10 times. We've decided to throw a proper belated birthday dinner this Sunday. Just family. Nothing fancy. Just want to make it right. We'd love for you to come. Everyone will be there. It was almost sweet. Almost. But it had the same undertone all their messages had since Paris. We're doing the thing you wanted, now show up and make it easier for us. What they didn't realize was, I hadn't wanted a party. I'd wanted to matter. And that ship had not just sailed, it had docked in a better harbor, one where people didn't need a wake-up call to treat me like I was part of their lives. Still, I thought about it. I sat with the message for an entire day. Not because I was tempted, but because some small part of me wanted to know what they would do if I walked through that door and greeted them not as the forgotten son, but as the man I had become without them. But then I imagined it. The fake smiles. The store-bought cake. Jason clapping me on the back, saying something like, "See? You made it!" As if they were the ones who had extended some act of mercy. Rebecca probably wouldn't say much. She was always the type to avoid confrontation with a tight-lipped smirk and a new shade of nail polish. My mother would hover, waiting for me to say thank you for a gesture that arrived 3 weeks and one solo vacation too late. So instead of replying, I made another plan. I booked a dinner at a private rooftop restaurant with Caleb and Jasmine. Invited a few others who had messaged me after seeing the Paris posts, people who remembered my birthday without being told. They came with gifts, inside jokes, and a kind of easy laughter that never felt conditional. We ordered everything off the tasting menu. Every bite was art. Every sip of wine was a middle finger to guilt. And while we toasted over dessert, Caleb raised his glass and said, "To the man who decided he didn't need permission to be celebrated." It hit me harder than I expected. Because he was right. I had spent so many years in the wings of my own story, waiting for someone to pull me center stage. Hoping they'd clap loud enough to drown out the silence. But now, I wasn't waiting anymore. After the dinner, I walked home through quiet city streets and posted one final photo from the night, just the dessert tray, candlelit, a gold-foiled chocolate reading Joyeux anniversaire in cursive script. My caption? Already celebrated, with people who didn't need a calendar reminder. No tags. No mentions. But I knew they'd see it. The next morning, my mother sent another message. "I guess you're not coming. That hurts, bud. I understand. We just wanted to show you we care." And for the first time, I replied, "If you cared, you wouldn't need to show it after the fact. You'd live it." I stopped waiting for performances. I already celebrated, with people who didn't forget me. There was no reply after that. No more texts. No more emails. Just silence. And honestly, it never sounded better.